Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna devotees.
Sorry I'm late. There's something unusual about this Zoom which I haven't quite understood properly. If I go one way, it always says end of the meeting and there's no other meeting I can see. But if I go another way, I get on like this, you know.
Yeah.
It's like really difficult to work out what's happening. Anyway, I know how to get onto it now if it says end of the meeting. So I think if I join first, it works the other way, but if I don't, then I have to come a roundabout way to get on. Anyway, so we're going to start this week's. I was just chanting away to myself of our prayers. And it's like this program. This program. It's like. Does anybody remember Agatha Christie?
Yeah. Yes.
There was one where there was. I don't know what they call it, 9 little nigger boys. They were on this island, and all of a sudden, one by one, they all got bumped off, and you were trying to work out who was the actual murderer, and then you thought, yeah, definitely him. Then next minute, he got bumped off, so it weren't him. So because they're all getting bumped off, and who's the culprit? Who's the culprit? One guess.
Mahamantra.
No, not this time. It's me. It must be me. Anyway, we're down to 6 now, so soon find out anyway. So we were talking about Srimad Bhagavatam. Anybody remote canto we're on?
3, Maharaj.
3, very good, very good. What chapter did you finish?
24?
No, try again.
25.
35.
25.
Oh,
No?
25. No, 25, that's right. We were talking about Satam Prasangam Amavirya Samvido, that, you know, in the association of pure devotees, topic about the Supreme Lord, satisfying and pleasing to the heart and to the ears. By cultivating this knowledge, one becomes advanced on the path of devotional service. Then when the attraction becomes fixed, one becomes freed, and then real devotional service begins. So it's talking about coming to the spontaneous platform. So it's talking about, you know, Vaidhi Bhakti. So then in the link is, there's a nice note in the link. Yeah. So depending on our association, you know, verse 25 was talking about, sorry about that. Verse 25 was talking about in the association of devotees, hearing is the key to going forward.
Hmm.
So it depends on the quality of our hearing. If we hear if it's low standard hearing, then we will get some purification depending on the advancement of who we're hearing from. Like if somebody says, don't go that way, you'll get into trouble. You know, he's already done that. So we can avoid getting into difficulty. We can be advanced to a certain point. I think everybody can understand that. But if we get really, quality association, high class, then we can get an attraction for Krishna by that person's realization and purity. And I've got a personal realization. I was hearing for many, many years about don't do this Prabhu and don't do that Prabhu, hearing classes. And it's like you're hearing the same thing, but it doesn't actually really change your outlook. You still carry on doing the same things. Has anybody had that experience?
Mm.
Yeah. Probably in this class. But anyway, but when we hear from somebody who's actually, really on the ball, it's like it affects the heart, doesn't it? We think,
Yeah.
oh, I really should start working on this. Because they have really practical understanding of the subject matter and they explain it. It's not just that, actually. It has potency to affect the heart. So that's the value of hearing from a Uttama Adhikari. But, it does affect the heart. That's my realization. Not. And this is what it's actually confirming here in this note. It's saying that if we, in excellent association, Krishna Katha causes anartha nivritti, and then becomes direct realization, samvidaha, of the great qualities, viryam, and produces nishta. Then it becomes an elixir for the heart, that's ruchi and ears. So very quickly it takes effect, and then a shakti and bhava, and then prema can follow. So it's all dependent. We can only go as far as the, association that we get. So it says we should search out the association if we're reading in the next of instruction of an Uttama Adhikari. Otherwise, we can only go as far as the advancement of the lower classes of association. And so then it starts talking in 26 and 27 about the practice of this. This is called Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So it's mixed with, and there's two kinds. Some of them mixed with Gyan. It'll be called Bhakti Mishra Gyan, where, this is in text 27, where Bhakti is secondary to the Gyan. We're more interested in Gyan. But because there's Bhakti there, then, there is some advancement. And the other one is Bhakti Mishra Yoga in text 26. So this is, primary element is Ashtanga Yoga, and secondary element is Bhakti. And so we will advance. So that's text 26 and 27. Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, and it's Bhakti Mishra Yoga, Bhakti Mishra Jnana, where the primary quality is the Jnana and the Yoga. So how did we get here? In text, we're going into, the first question was, in text 10 of this chapter, it said, please dispel my ignorance of aham ameti due to my false ego and created by your Maya. So she knows she's talking to the Supreme Lord. And what is her Maya? She enjoyed with her husband, if you remember, for many years, but she never took advantage of his, advanced association. She was lamenting. So first question she asks is, dispel this ignorance which caused this. And now in text 28, in text 28, it's going to talk about other questions she asks. She asks first question, which is question 2 of the whole chapter, is what what kind of bhakti should I perform to easily attain your feet? Okay? And so this will be answered now right to the end of this chapter about, pure devotional service. And then next question she asks is, explain the jnana which one understands the truth, the tattvas. So that'll be explained in the next chapter, and chapter 27. Okay? And then question 4 is, explain the yoga aimed at the Lord for liberation. How many limbs does it have? So that's explained in 29. So this is by...
Maharaj,
Yeah?
you said that question about Tattva Gyan will be answered in the next chapter 27. Next chapter 27 or next chapter 26?
And 27, 26 and 27.
26.
This will be about Jnana Mishra Bhakti, or Bhakti Mishra Jnana. Okay? So now we're going to talk about Bhakti. So, and then she talks about a disqualification for understanding. And because, we're not pure in our desires, she's going to hear about mixed devotional service. So that's what Lord Kapila is starting with, something which is appropriate to her situation and our situation. And so jnana is also called Sankhya. So this is where, Kapila Muni is explaining Sankhya Yoga, which is a combination of bhakti and yoga. Okay, so bhakti's first principle is that bhakti is beyond the modes of nature, and it can, when it's performed without material desires, it's got different limbs, different parts to it. So first one is Rishikesha, Rishikena, as we heard in the Nectar of Devotion. It's performed with the senses and in the service of the Lord. And how do we know how to perform it? According to the Guru and scriptures. So it's the same thing as the Nectar of Devotion. What else is mind? Mind should be exclusively dedicated to the Lord. So, it's actually, when we perform just with the body, it's like a mechanical devotional service. We've decided to do it, so there's some benefit, but it's not really, perform with the mind. It's perform with the mind, ideally. So there's the senses should serve Krishna according to Guru and Shastra. This is Vaidhi. And the mind should be focused on the Lord. And ideally, it should be spontaneously attracted. This is called bhava, when we're spontaneous to the platform of bhava. And that when we do that, it's superior to liberation. And it quickly destroys the false ego or the subtle body. It's like a fire consumes food within the body, It's automatic. The body's designed that way. So our aim is to remember Krishna when we're doing things. Tasmat sarvashu kaleshu mam anusraya yagyacha mayapita manobhidya tepi yanti paramritim. Mami vaishata samshaya. Therefore you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting, Krishna tells Arjuna. So let's just understand this. Spontaneity or the bhava stage is developed either from Vaidhi Bhakti, as explained in this particular section we're in now, or the next section, 34 to 37. We're going to explain about how bhava is achieved by Vaidhi Bhakti, or it can be achieved, as we'll hear later in the Nectar of Devotion, by Raganuga Bhakti, as explained in text 28, compared to these two spontaneous, and then compared to these two which come to the platform of spontaneity, there's unspontaneous Bhakti, which is what we've just been talking about, Vaidhi Bhakti, and it's inferior. When it's not come to the stage of bhava, it's just Vaidhi Bhakti. But when it's progressive and it comes to eventually to bhava, then that's actually spontaneous. And then the other way is called Raganuga. That's in text 28. So that's like what they call it, Pushti Marg. When they worship Krishna as the son. We're not advised to go that way. It's very, very iffy, if you know what I mean. How do we get to the stage of having Krishna as a son? Usually, you have to go through Vaidhi first, you know. Anyway, maybe from a previous birth. And that, so, you know, now we're going to hear from text 37 about Vaidhi Bhakti, which comes to Bhava Bhakti or spontaneous devotion, or Raga Bhakti. So, is everybody okay with that?
Mm.
So, text 34, never desires impersonal liberation. That's the first quality. Always engaged in service at the Lord's lotus feet. And they're always glorifying Krishna in the association of devotees. And 35 is a very famous verse about how we see the deity. My attractive smiling face with red eyes, my various benevolent transcendental forms. Devotees talk favourably with me. Prabhupada said in the purport, well, that's a very advanced stage. We start to develop a relationship with the deity. This is starting with Kanishka Adhikari. And then it develops to this advanced stage. 36, Bhakti gives liberation without separate endeavour, although not desiring it. This is the 5 types of liberation. The devotee is not interested in that. And then 37, the last verse of this Vaidhi Bhakti. We don't desire to go to the higher, any karma, to go to the higher planets, to develop any mystic siddhis, or even to go to the kingdom of God. And we attain all benedictions even in this life because Krishna rewards them. We get everything. Bhagavad Gita, it says that, what's that verse? 828. Talks about how a devotee gets all material opulences. What the results of karma, yoga, austerities are given to him just by performing bhakti yoga. So that's Vaidhi, which eventually comes to, as we hear, seeing the deity and becoming, even being able to speak with the deity. That's called Raga Bhakti or Bhava Bhakti, spontaneous Bhakti. Or we can come to Bhava Bhakti by performing spontaneous devotional service. So we're spontaneously attracted and it develops into Bhava. So what is that? That's Raganuga Bhakti. Raga means the path leading to Raga Bhakti, which is a path of attachment to the Lord, or Bhava Bhakti. But Anuga means to follow. We follow a devotee who has a certain mood which we're attracted to. So in text 38, it's mentioning They accept the Lord as their lover, son, friend, etc. The 5 different relationships. So that will develop eventually. You know, there's 2 kinds of Vaidhi Bhakti. One is up the way Bhakti Bhava, by straight that Vaidhi Bhakti, which we just mentioned in 34 to 37, or by, we can come to this platform of spontaneity by Vaidhi Bhakti, but then we get the association of a devotee, and then we can go to Goloka Vrindavan and enjoy that, one of those 5 relationships in Goloka Vrindavan. The other type of Vaidhi Bhakti, which we mentioned, means we go to Vaikuntha. Okay. So it's important that we get, you know, now we don't go so all of a sudden, you know, dropping everything and start looking for a Raganuga Bhakta who's got a particular mood that we think we have, you know. And then we mess up everything. We've already got a Raganuga Bhakta, that's Srila Prabhupada. Just do as I do. What does he do? He just writes books, chants, distributes books, preaches about Krishna. So keep it simple like that, you know. That's why it's important to understand it. That's why it's so important to read Nectar of Devotion. Otherwise, you know, the tiny brain starts getting carried away, and then somebody who's a bit, you know, off the mark comes on and starts preaching to him, and, you know, with a wide open mouth, you know, we follow him. And we finish up, you know, losing it. Okay, so is everybody clear on that? Mm-hmm. And then there's a link in between, for those devotees who are not qualified for Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, which is spontaneous, well, it's just going over the same thing. All right, 32 to 38, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is non-spontaneous. And then now 39 is to 40 is recommended. Vaidhi Bhakti, which is non-spontaneous. That's where we go to Vaikuntha. Giving up all attachment of this world and the next, the devotee exclusively worships me. Thus I take them beyond birth and death. And 41. Fear of material world cannot be overcome by any means except by devotion to me. And then Devata Uti asks, won't the Devatas become angry if one just worships you? And Krishna says in 42, or Lord Kapila says, wind blows, the sun shines, Indra pours rain, fire burns, and death flees, all out of fear of me. So we don't have to worry about worshipping the demigods. The yogis take shelter of my lotus feet, by bhakti equipped, mixed with jnana and vairagya, for the highest perfection, entering into the kingdom of God and without fear. So this is Vaidhi Bhakti we're reading about now. We've read about, this is straight Vaidhi Bhakti, which leads to Vaikuntha. The other one leads to Bhava Bhakti. One is by Vaidhi Bhakti, but we get the association of the Raganuga Bhakti. And the other one is we've already got the association of a Raganuga Bhakti. But now is not, we don't get the association of a Raganuga Bhakti. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this is in 43, is about Bhakti, Jnana, and Bhakti Mishra yogis, mixed devotees. The greatest benefit can be achieved only by offering one's mind in intense bhakti So it's saying that we shouldn't be a mixture of bhakti. If we become a pure bhakti, then we can actually get the full benefit of devotional service. Like, you know, the 5 types of liberation, if we were reading last week in Nectar of Devotion, they desire like to have the same form as the Lord, live on the same planet, have the same opulence. Is that right?
Mm.
What else? Live on the same planet. And what's the last one?
Merge.
Merge. No, there's another one. That's not desire. That's impersonalist. Same planet.
Was it a relationship? Yeah. On the planet, by come to the planet.
In the same form, that's one. Sarupya, Salokya, live on
Relationship.
Samipya, have the same opulences. And Sharashti have the same bodily features. Is that right? Okay. Okay. So this will stand you in good stead for the Nectar of Devotion later on. Fundamental principles of material nature is in text 26. And we're not going to do much reading because otherwise we won't get much out of it. It needs explaining as we go through. We'll just see, you know, we won't be able to tell the difference without. We'll just see it all as devotional service, somehow or other, you know. So the link is from the last chapter. Now we're going to talk about the question 3 from the last chapter, which is about bhakti mixed with gyan. And she was satisfied with her answers in the last, but now we're going to talk about, you know, the process of bhakti mixed with gyan. Although bhakti is supreme, and without bhakti, karma and gyan and yoga cannot give any result of swaga or liberation. A person engaged in bhakti is also inquisitive about karma, gyan and yoga. If you don't know the process, how to, you know, develop love for the Supreme Lord, you know, gyan will help us to understand. And yoga, you know, linking ourselves by chanting will help us to understand also. So now in this section we're going to talk about gyan. So, you know, if we hear, we get knowledge. What happens when we hear? We become freed from the influences of the modes of nature by hearing. I remember when I first read, you know, the science of self-realization, I got to a point where I understood I wasn't the body, I was eternal. I think I mentioned this last week, didn't I? You know, we're in bliss. Because I wasn't sure, you know, I'd heard all these things, but I thought it's all a load of codswallop. I'd come to that conclusion because nobody could actually explain it. And every time you asked about these things, you know, you just got a, you know, what do you call it? You just got a, you know, an answer, a useless answer, which didn't really mean anything. Instead of increasing my faith, I became more of an atheist. I thought, if this is all the explanation is, it's just a load of codswallop. And gradually I got more and more into sense gratification from, you know, from the age of like 13, 14. Before that, I was pretty God-fearing. And then, you know, by attending religious instruction classes at school, I became a complete atheist. So, you know, I'd have probably joined if I'd have been left, if I hadn't met the Bhakti yogis, I'd have probably become a born-again Christian. So anyway, in text 20, in chapter 20, Kapila will discuss Gyan or Sankhya in answer to question 3. And it talks about, manifesting the Mahatattva, universal form, how the universe, here we come again, creation, composed of those elements, and it begins being brought to life by the entrance of the Lord. So one effect of Gyan is it frees us from the modes of nature, so we get relief, attains perfection of self-realization. We start to understand the self, we understand the self. And it cuts the knot of attachment to material world. So this is what Gyan does. Frees us from the bodily conception, cuts us attachment to the material world, and gives us a realization of the self. So, but what's that? Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Nasochati, Akankshati. So this is that verse. So now we're going to talk about the characteristics of the Lord. So it mentioned the characteristics of the Lord that is beyond. Anyway, we don't have to go into it. I think we're going to get into things too much, otherwise we're not going to remember everything. It explains the characteristics of the Lord, the Purusha, and his interaction with Prakriti in text 4. And then the Jiva's interaction with Prakriti in text 5 to 7. Text 8, it talks about Prakriti. Prakriti is the cause of the Jiva's body, senses, and sense devatas, the demigods. And the cause of the and the Purusha, the Supreme Lord, is the cause of the giving the Jiva free choice, either to serve his own senses or to accept material body and engage in Krishna consciousness or engage in Krishna consciousness. So the Lord is bestowing the results of our activities in that respect. Devahuti, question 3, again, describe more about the characteristics of Prakriti and Purusha. So then from 10 to 14, it describes the characteristics of Pradhan. Oh, here we go. Pradhan. Remember Pradhan. What did we say it was?
It's a mixture of everything that is going to be used for creation by Brahma. It's got all the things that is required for creation.
All the ingredients.
Yes, all the ingredients.
But they're not they're all mixed up. It's like,
It's like a soup.
Yeah, it's like an airfix kit. Which use that example of airfix. Maha Mantra, remember airfix.
Yes, of course, Maharaj, yeah. I can still smell the glue.
He's as old as the hills, Maha Mantra. So, yeah, it's all mixed up, and then we start to put it together and it starts to become useful. And so it takes the living entity to do that and time. And then it becomes the Mahatattva, and then the Prakriti, the material energy. So it's like the lucky bag with everything in it, and we've got to put it all together. That's Pradhan. Oh man, it's getting dark here. I didn't see the book. Looks like it's going to rain. So here it tells you the characteristics. Unmanifested, avyakta. It's eternal, aggregate of the three modes, cause of Prakriti, the stage of existence, consists of cause and effect, undifferentiated. They're all different. different parts in it, all mixed, yet it has variety. It's not all one, it has variety within it, but it's not being put together. And its products is that from that will come Prakriti when the intelligence of the Supreme Lord is used. And if, by the entrance of the Super Soul, that becomes useful, although he puts the kit together, we get the 24 elements, and those 24 elements are then waiting, they're in an egg, floating on the causal ocean, until waiting for Brahma to come along, with his toolkit and put it all together and make different living entities, like Lego. So this is the Lego creation. This is from the Dayananda Samhita. Okay, so now we've got the time element, we've got the Mahatattva, we've got the consciousness, the false ego, the mind, the intelligence, the senses, the sense objects, sound, so we've got everything there. We don't have to go through that. Oh dear. So starting at 50, Karya Shristi. Takes it, all the elements were unmixed. The Supreme Lord entered the universe along with Kala, Karma and Gunas. When those elements roused into activity and united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose from which appeared the Virat Rupa. Within the universal egg is the universal form 14 planetary systems, which is covered outside by 7 layers. Each layer is 10 times thicker than the previous layer. And the final outside layer is covered by, what's the outside layer?
Is it ether?
Eh?
Is it ether?
The ether. Pradhan.
Pradhan.
Pradhan, it says. Yeah, ether is the last one, but here it says Pradhan is outside that. The Virat Purusha situated himself in the golden egg, which was lying on the water, and he divided into many departments. So just go to, from 54 to 56, then creation of the various limbs of the Virat Rupa. So we've done that before. And then the Devatas come along and they wake up the Virat Rupa and start using all the different limbs. Like the Vayu creates what does Vayu create? I forgot now myself. Anyway, Surya comes along, or Agni comes along, creates a fire in the belly for digestion. Varuna comes along and water's created from the universal form, which is also necessary for digestion and for maintaining the body. And remember we did this before. And then it says that they all tried to wake up this Virat Rupa, before they could do all these things we just mentioned, but they couldn't wake him up. Why was that? Any ideas? Too much pressure. Anyway, they couldn't wake him up. No, it's not too much prasad. It's because the super soul wasn't there. The chitta, the consciousness of the super soul, entered the Virat Rupa, and then everything became usable. So, we read in Bhagavad Gita 13:23. What's that verse? Upadrasta and Amantachar. He's the witnesser and overseer. And when he's there, he sanctions all activity. So he's sanctioned that, you know, the Virat Rupa was actually usable by his energy. Okay? The man proposes and God disposes. So that's a super soul. We desire and super soul fulfilled. Then we come on to 27, understanding material nature. Now, you know, how to use these elements in order for self-realization, how to live in this. The link, 327, Kapila discusses the method of Bhakti Mishra Gyan. So how to use this Gyan in devotional service, and the method for attaining liberation. So 26 was about creation, now how to use it for liberation with the process of Gyan and Bhakti. And it talks, in this one, it talks about how the jiva is not affected by the modes, but due to illusion, he thinks he's affected, he thinks he's the body. And when we become absorbed in that way, we become bewildered and the false ego is manifested. Then every action we perform is faulty and it leads to, you know, further reactions and further reaction, rebirth in the material world. And so we have to stop that process of identifying with the material world. That's the first thing it's saying. Remember, Devahuti was, first question, how do I stop this ignorance, this identification with this body? Gradually control the materially attached mind through Bhakti Yoga with detachment. And then by that process, we can obtain liberation. You know, yama niyama. Yama means negating which is actually not useful, like following four legislative principles, negating the four sinful activities, and niyama, engaging in positive. That's like chanting the Maha Mantra for us. And particularly with devotion and faith that I am real, and also by hearing my topics. So we have to have faith to practice, and we have to have some degree of devotion. That means following the instructions, doing what the spiritual master wants us to do. This is a sign of devotion. We could do so many things. And then hearing the topics which make everything, it makes sense of everything we're doing. In Bhakti Mishra Gyan, this is a note. In Bhakti Mishra Gyan, which is about impersonal liberation, the primary element is Gyan and the secondary element is Bhakti, and Ashtanga Yoga. Bhakti Mishra Gyan. Then it talks about the qualities that we develop as a jnani. So these are all impersonal qualities, but we need to develop these qualities to make that easy as a devotee. But we develop them automatically by devotional service. And so actually they develop them by devotional service mixed with jnana also. Is there any difference between our process and this process we're talking about? It's a mixture, isn't it? That we follow the instructions of the spiritual master and we can achieve pure bhakti. But what does he tell us to do? read the books. So we have to develop Bhakti Gyan by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, we may develop Gyan through a long-winded process. But we've got the advantage of knowing which books to read. But the books on, the Bhakti Shastras. And this is why it's a very expedient process. We have to develop Gyan. Without Gyan, we don't really understand what we're doing. Liberated soul realizes the super soul. What's the characteristics of the super soul? So we'll not go through that. We've been through it before. Anyway, I'll just say a few. One without a second is it. He pervades everything. He reveals everything. He's the cause of Prakriti. Manifested as a reflection, even in the false ego. I don't really understand that. And then text 12 to 13. That talks about soul and super soul. 14, 16. Soul without material coverings. So this talks about when we become freed from the false ego. The soul is pure, alert, free from the false ego, yet he appears to be covered by the false ego and its products, which are the senses, the mind, contaminated intelligence. Although he can feel his existence vividly, he thinks that he is lost and feels distressed, like a person who has lost his wealth. With the disappearance of the false ego and its products during sleep. I don't understand that at all. Anyway, but when he realizes that he is pure individual soul by mature understanding, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. He understands his. So we're coming towards the end of this chapter. 17 to 20. Then Devotee asks him, this question about Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Since Prakriti, material energy, and Jiva are attached to each other eternally, how is their separation possible? Although not the doer, he is attached to the mode, and Prakriti acts on him and binds him. Then, how is he liberation possible? Anybody know the answer?
Devotional service? No.
Yeah, I mean, it's by knowledge in this case. Kapila recommends intense practice. One can get liberation by intense practice that includes intense practice of this Yoga Mishra Bhakti for a long time, without desire of fruitive results, performing our prescribed duties, being nourished by hearing about me, perfect knowledge and detachment that will develop by the previous categories. Austerity, yoga, and self-absorption. So first thing is intensity of our bhakti. And, it has to be over a long period of time in order to purify the heart. And develop detachment to wanting to enjoy the results. And at the same time, because we're not pure yogis, we have some material duties. So it says executing our prescribed duties, Swardharmena. And most important, by hearing at the same time. By hearing, we can practice the other angles, the previous ones. And then perfect knowledge is developed And then automatically we develop more austerity, more connection with Krishna, become absorbed like that. By thus practicing seriously, the influence of Prakriti over Jiva can be removed, just as wooden sticks that cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. That's therapeutic, isn't it? We get rid of the ailment by, like if you've got if you had a broken limb and they take the pot off, they still use pots nowadays.
They've got a caste system.
You what?
Sorry, they've got a caste system.
And they are really. Yeah, very good, very good.
Yeah, sorry.
You don't, Mahamantra don't say much, but when it does, it counts, doesn't it? Yeah, so yeah, we've got a caste system. I forgot what I was talking about now. What were we talking about?
Broken leg.
All right, broken leg. Oh, therapeutic process, that's right. And so therapy means, what do you do with the leg? You keep it, you don't walk on it, you just let it stiffen up until it's completely useless. Now you have to walk on it, and it's painful, and eventually the use comes back. So we're performing what seems to be the things which will, bind us in material world. But the process is therapeutical, so it'll actually cure us. So we follow the instruction of a good therapist, we'll do the right exercises. Is that right? And then, we'll get use back in the limb. But if we don't follow his advice, we'll probably cripple ourselves for life if we're not careful. By discovering the faultlessness of his desire to lord it over Prakriti, by therefore giving it up, the Jiva becomes independent and stands in his own glory. It's like we won't wake up from a dream, we realize we've been dreaming. And therefore we start to, we don't take part in the dream anymore. Prakriti cannot harm him because he knows the absolute truth or the elements. He has fixed his mind on me, rejoices in the self. Final liberation of the yogi. Such a yogi engaged in self-realization for many lifetimes with complete detachment from everything. So this sounds like the process that Dhruva Maharaj performed. Text 28, my devotee becomes self-realized by my mercy and attains his ultimate goal, having cut all doubts, his destination abode under my shelter, and never comes back. Attains his ultimate goal, having cut all doubts, his destined abode. He attains his destined abode by my shelter and never comes back. So ultimately, all these things we do, at the end of the day, it has to be actually, we have to get Krishna's mercy. I was listening to one day by Prabhupada, he may chant your rounds nicely. He made us so many things. He says, but, if you're not pleasing Krishna for some reason, then, we're actually defeating everything. Master of Instruction said it's dependent on our, Krishna's called Bhavagraha Janardhan. He knows the mood in which we're doing things. So, that's what we really have to. One devotee, he was a congregational member, and he had ill health, but, he wasn't very old, he must have been in his early 40s, but, and you know, they told me, but I didn't know, he was a nice devotee, that, you know, every so often he'd have a quick puff, you know, and I was thinking that, you know, that's not the best thing to do. But then, I don't know all the details, but he left his body in Mayapur in a cow shed. And so I was thinking that, you know, according to Shastra, when you do that, you go back to Godhead. So he must have been doing something right, you know. So it's not up to our, you know, austerity and our endeavour completely. If we actually are not, if we're a little bit proud of these things, they can be actually have the opposite effect. When his heart is no longer attracted by the byproducts of yoga, he can attain final liberation, where death cannot overcome him. So that's the end of text, chapter 27. A little bit confusing, but as long as we get the main principles, that's the main things to remember. You know, you have to keep going over these things to really understand them. And but if we do understand them, it's very good for us because, you know, we know exactly what process we're following, why our process is different from other forms of devotional service, and you know, why it's actually the most expedient process, how it works, like that. How to avoid becoming bewildered by sahajas who may come along and tell us that we haven't got everything, we need to do this. Is there anything on that? And any questions or comments?
Maharaj.
What's that?
Hi, Bob. I'm just speaking to a friend on Facebook. She posted something about the soul and the body, and you know, it was vaguely transcendental. So I kind of mentioned something like about Sankhya Yoga and the not identifying with the body and identify with the soul instead. So I think this kind of section, the talks between Kapila and Devahuti, it's maybe something I can give her a link to this book, or do you think it's too in depth? Or
She was asking what? Just say again.
Sorry. Yeah. Basically, a friend on Facebook was mentioning about the body and the soul and identifying with the soul. So I gave her a little bit of a little bit of information. But I was just wondering, is this kind of section suitable for real beginners? If I give her a link or a book,
I think it might. It's a bit of reading Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
You know, it's like this is a postgraduate study and it's going into more depth. If she reads this, you know, it might actually completely bewilder her, you know.
Yeah, okay.
She might start practicing mystic yoga or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, you need somebody, you know, it's a process and you can't just jump. You know, you can read it superficially in the beginning, but don't tell her to study this section, or I think it might...
Okay, thanks. I'll give it back chapter 2.
Yeah, just start to read chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, or the science of self-realization. You know, and like that. Perfect questions, perfect answers. That'll keep her occupied for some time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So next week, we'll talk about, so in that section, we spoke about 25 was Bhakti, 26 and 27 was Dhyan. And question 4 was explain yoga aimed at the lotus feet for liberation. So we're about Bhakti yoga, following the Ashtanga yoga process. This is devotional service. It's devotional service. But if you remember, it was adding these two processes to the pure process. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido. Our process is to hear in the association of devotees. That's all, and engage in devotional service. Not these processes. Some of the processes may be applicable and some are not. But we're hearing about the other processes as well. It's actually, devotees should have a good understanding really about everything. Should be expert. Uttamadhikari understands all the different things, and therefore is able to actually convince and talk to everybody according to their particular situation. So that's ideally, what we want, but at least we should try, Okay, and then we'll go on to 25, what is devotional service? 26, 27, jnana mixed with devotional service. 28, yoga mixed with devotional service. 29, explanation of devotional service. Okay. And then we go on to 30, and then we get on to the subjects that we have to be careful of, adverse fruitive activities, movements of the living entities. That means movements through the planetary system, so different species of life, different planets. Entanglement in fruitive activities. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week. And we'll see you on Sunday. Okay.
Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Thanks, Maharaj. Gauranga.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Do you have something to say, Karshana Prabhu?
No.
Oh, I thought you were asking. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.